Hi, thank you for joining us. I'm Jared Robson. I'm the Assistant Head of Pupil Progress at Parkhouse English School, and tonight we're going to be talking, explaining to you all about internal assessment data that we use at Parkhouse English School. Some of you might have been speaking to your children that come to our school, and they might have mentioned about doing assessments or tests, or CAT tests as the students used to call them. Now, this session is just giving you information about exactly what they are, what we use them for, and how they help us in teaching. Now, that is my email address down there. That's on the first slide and the last slide. So if you've got any questions, please contact me at that address. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the assessments that we do at Parkhouse English School, the GL assessments, and that there's 3 assessments: Cat 4 assessment, progress tests in maths and English, and the new one that we've started to do is PASS, which is pupil attitudes to self and school, which is not really a test, it's more of a survey. Now, the school spends quite a lot of money, a lot of resources into this, and I'm quite privileged to work at a school that puts, so much, resources into GL assessments, because it really is a valuable tool for teaching and preparing for our lessons, as we'll come on to do. And recently, we've just started to do the PASS survey, which is, with the pandemic, as we'll come on to in a second, or later on in this presentation, you'll see that it's a valuable tool which brings all 3 of them together. It's really key information, that one. Okay, next slide, please. Now, we've got 4 different people in this slide, and this is going to explain to us why we use data. Now, this guy here, I don't know if you're aware that this is Bob Paisley. Now, this is Liverpool's most successful manager. He won 6 league titles, 3 Champions League or European Cup was there, and he probably didn't use data. He came to work, he trained the lads to go and play, and he was very motivated and very charismatic. He was very successful. Now, we've got a modern day manager now, which is Jurgen Klopp, and he's not the same. I'm not saying he's not successful. In the long run, he could be even more successful. But the modern day football manager, he uses data analysis, sports scientists, and they use data. And if they didn't use data as a football club, they would be left behind, because all of the other clubs are kind of using them. Now, the third person here is an old-fashioned teacher. You can see there he's probably, he's using an old-fashioned blackboard. And to be honest, this is before my time. By the time I started my education in Northeast England in the 90s, we progressed from the blackboard. We actually used overhead projectors and stuff like that. So that is before mine. But the old-fashioned teacher was very knowledgeable, very charismatic, very intelligent. But things have changed, and the 4th image here represents the modern-day teacher, where the modern-day teacher is, they have to use data so they understand the students, and this is the teacher, the person we're going to talk about in this presentation here. So why do we use data? Now, the most important thing of the data is to understand the needs of our students. And once we understand the needs of our students, this is when we can help teachers prepare for our students and to plan for lessons. So we've done lots of assessments with the students, and it's our job to ensure that all of our teachers know how to use the data in order to prepare outstanding lessons so our students reach the potential and achieve success. And the third reason is so we can know what success looks like. If we have got a target, then if the student reaches that target or doesn't reach that target, we can then judge success, just like in any business. Now, the CAT4 assessment, which is the first one I'm going to talk to you about, this is made up of 4 different batteries, or 4 different categories. Now, the first category is the verbal battery. Now, this gives us knowledge of students' ability to think and reason with words. So what we say with the verbal is we associate this with their English ability. Now, the next battery, quantitative, that is the ability to think and reason with numbers, and we associate this one with maths. Now, the non-verbal battery, this is ability to think in with reason with concepts and ideas, and I associate this one with logic, shapes and patterns, and this one is, it can be used for science-based subjects. And the spatial one, which is the latest one, a few years ago, spatial was brought in as a new battery because it recognised that we weren't getting this catered for in the previous 3 batteries. So this is the ability for students to think and reason with space and shape. And this is usually based around STEM-based subjects and physical science, architecture, problem solving. Now, from the CAT4 assessment, information that this gives us, or it gives our teachers, is very valuable. Now, the first thing it gives us is a verbal deficit, and this is students that are restricted by having to learn a new language. Now, in any school, not just international schools, if I was doing this presentation for a school in England, this would be vitally important. So this is verbal deficit. This is students where English is not their first language, and as you can imagine, out here in Qatar, there's lots of students where the English isn't the first language. They go home and they're not necessarily speaking to parents in English, and this is really important. One of the things about Parkhouse students is that we get some very clever students for working at Parkhouse English School. Some of the students I've worked with, have been exceptionally bright, but sometimes the English isn't the first language, and when they sit their exams, they are in English. Now, this, to me, is the first flag for teachers to let them know, just, yes, they're clever, but make sure they are understanding what the exam question or what the teacher is explaining or telling them. So this, is vitally important. And I would say this is probably one of the most important bits of information we get. The second bit of information we get is an indicated grade. Now, this is what all of the students latch onto. So when students do the pass test, they immediately go to, what's my indicated grade? What grade am I going to get? That's what that's the currency I think they deal with. However, as teachers, and certainly myself, this has become less important, the less important thing, as I've got to know how to use CAT4 data. It's still important, and it's also just think of the terminology I've just used there. It's an indicated grade, most likely to achieve. Now, sometimes something happens in the way, for example, a pandemic, where that could have put barriers in place. So it's an indicated grade. It's not the grade they are, definitely will achieve. It's the indicated grade, what they're most likely to achieve if they do everything right and the teaching is good. So The test itself is online. We do it all online, and it consists of 3 online 40-minute sessions. And what we do is we normally sit them into ICT suite, and they do it, and it takes around about about 2 hours. And they have a little break in between the 3 tests. And it's worth mentioning as well, it's a measure of cognitive thinking skills. So therefore, it's checking how they think, the logic, cognitive thinking skills. No revision can be done. When these students do the test, sometimes they're allowed to use an on-screen calculator, and we give them pieces of paper so they can do little notes as they go on, but there's no revision for this. So students can't revise for this, and so that's important. They usually, and I say the word usually because obviously of late it hasn't been a perfect world, but usually students do this at the start of each key stage. So in primary school, they'll do it at the beginning of key stage 2, then they'll do it at key stage 3 at the beginning, which is year 7, and then when they go into key stage 4, you will do it in year 10, and then in year 12 they sometimes do it, but sometimes we do a different thing which is called ALICE, which is a similar thing but more focused for A levels, which I'm not really going to go into today. Okay, so this is just a little example of what the questions look like. So you can see it's a multiple choice question there, where it is you've got to explain what the next word would be on that one there. The quantitative, again, it's a number sort of line where you've got a sequence where you've got to choose the number. The non-verbal one is what shapes is next in the sequence, and the spatial one is patterns of the diagrams down there. So, and sometimes I look at these tests and I think, oh, this is quite confusing. That it's worth bearing in mind that for each year group, for each key stage, it's a different type of test. So year 7 will get a different test to year 9, and year 9 will get a different, than year 10, and year 10 get a different one for key stage 5. Now, this is what the parent report looks like. Now, I don't know if you've realised, but I think it was last week, the administration team uploaded the CAT reports and the progress reports for parents, and it's on the parental portal. Now, I'm not a parent of a child at this school, so I don't know what the parent side of the portal looks like, but where you find your reports, end of term report, you will now find something on there for CAT and for progress tests, and this is what it looks like. So this is your CAT 4 test, and it gives you a score here of the 4 batteries that I've talked about, but it also gives you a summary. Now, this is just a couple of bullet points of the summary. The actual summary that you'll receive will have 4 or 5 different bullet points. I just cut it out there just so you can get an idea of what it looked like, and you can see I've graded or blocked out the child's name of the report I've used. Now, to read this report, the yellow bit is what we say is the average. This is the average, and I'm not massively keen on the word average. I don't know if it's got the right word, so I sometimes replace this as expected. So the yellow band is expected. So you can see this student here is doing above expected, and for their non-verbal skills, which we said was the science, so to me this student here would be very good at science, and obviously they're good at maths as well, so we'd be looking at chemistry and physics, but overall in general this student is doing really well, more than expected, or above average as it says. Now, the progress, with the CAT test, that helps teachers prepare and for the lessons and plan lessons and understand by the students. The progress tests, this is where we measure the progress of the student. So progress tests usually happen at the, we usually do this at the end of the year, and the point of this is to see if students are making adequate progress. So this judges them on previous progress tests they've done, maybe it's in primary school or previous on school, but we can also compare this to the progress that was supposed to be expected from the CAT4 test. So, and I mentioned that thing called data triangulation, where we start to look and compare the data against other batteries and other tests, and the three tests which we're doing. So with the maths and English, which we use, there was a science one we've done a few years ago. I'm talking 5 or 6 years ago we did science, but we don't do the science at the moment. We just do the English and the maths, and this is understands, you know, the student's knowledge, understanding, application of the core subjects, and it tracks the progress. And what is hugely important at the moment is it indicates possible gaps in the learning. So we've just had students who've missed learning because of the pandemic. Now this has been an absolutely vital tool as we look at your children and we look, say, where are the gaps? Now with the progress English test and the progress maths test, this actually gives information to the maths teachers of actual areas of the maths and the English of where they actually gaps in the learning. So for a teaching tool, again, this is vitally important for us. Now the progress test, there's two 40-minute tests per subject. So two 40 minutes in maths, 2 40 minutes in English. And this is completed by all key stage 3 students annually, and we do it towards the end of the term, or end of the year. And again, as I mentioned in the previous slide, it's triangulated with the CAT4 data and the PASS4 data. And I'll kind of recap that once I've explained what PASS is. Now, the next slide, this shows you what the report for parents looks like on the parental report. So if we're looking at this student here, this is, you can see that in general, they're doing okay in English. However, if you look at it closely, they're just slightly below the expected grade they're supposed to be getting. So you can see that they're doing better in the reading comprehension and they need to work on the English skills. So that again is valuable information for the English department. And there's the description here, again, I've just give you one bullet point, but when I was looking at the reports, there are 3 or 4 different bits of information on there. This is the maths profile. So you can see here, this student here, and I've just picked a random student. You can see here that this student is doing really well with the, you know, this student is making good progress with maths. And again, it gives you a description here, and you can see stuff in here about 3D figures and Pythagoras' theorem. And again, that gives, you know, the parents a report on what areas that they're working on, which they're doing well on, and what they need to improve on. Now, this is the new test or survey, as it really is, and this is the one we've just started doing in the last 12 months. And the reason we've done this as a new one is because of the pandemic. You know, basically schools around the world are going through a mental health crisis as a result of COVID, and you know, where we've got gaps in the learning and we've got students underachieving, this past data is a method to flag up that, to say we've got a problem with a certain child. Now, I'll go on to how it works in a second, but basically what this does, it flags up us the potential problems that students may encounter, which may affect them achieving that indicated grade. So what it's doing from this pass is it allows us to be proactive, and it helps us to understand the mindset of our pupils, because we know if the students don't have the correct mindset, then they are at risk of underachieving. Okay. Now there's 9 different batteries in PASS, and it's a 20-minute survey, and I sometimes set it in Form Tutor. We do have a run program where they go to the ICT room for a Form Tutor session. Last year I sent this out to do for students at home. Again, there can be no revision. It's not really educational. It's I think it's 50 questions where, what do you think about school? What do you like about your learning? What do you think about the teachers? How do you communicate with others? How do you feel? And it looks at, are they happy at school? Are they confident? Are they, do they doubt their own ability? What's their self-confidence like? Do they like coming to school? Do they prefer learning at home? And this gives us a real insight. And with the past data, the CAT4 data and the progress tests, this now, when we compare all 3 together, and I've done a lot of work with teachers where we're now starting to look at all 3 bits of data together, this is where we've really seen the usefulness of the GL assessments really take off. And I can't, say how important I feel this. I'm really passionate about how important this is as we look, to get our students through what's been a very few difficult years of education for students and staff. And, this is really helping us to identify where the weaknesses are, what work we need to do with them, and how are students feeling. What are our students, and from the past data, I've looked at the past data, and it's really telling that students have been really struggling with the mental health and their well-being over the last few years, and it's understandable. It really is. So from what we've just talked about there, just to summarise for you, I've explained to you what the assessments are, which is the CAT4, the progress tests in maths and English, and PASS. So hopefully if your children come home and say, I've just been doing a CAT4 test or a PASS test, you know exactly what they are. You know why us as teachers and practitioners, as senior leaders, are looking at this data and using the data, and how we feel that this is important and a vital tool for teaching. And also the third thing is, as parents, hopefully I've explained to you how to understand the results and read them. And if you just go to the next slide, please. And so what I would suggest you do, have a look into your parental portal, have a look at these assessments, have a read of them, and if you're not sure, if you've got any questions, obviously get in touch with me at my email address, which is below there. And also, if you go onto the GL assessment website, they've got absolutely loads of resources for teachers, for parents, and it gives you a real insight. I mean, it's quite a common thing for schools to be doing. Schools globally around the world are using these. I speak to lots of colleagues who use them. In fact, I'd say more schools use them than not doing them. And again, I think I can't express how important this is. If Parkhouse didn't do GL assessments, I think they would get left behind. So I think they're really beneficial. So hopefully that's explained to you what they are and why we use them. And if you've got any questions, I'm Jared Robson. I'm at parkhouseschool.com, the website there, or the email address. Please get in touch. Thank you for listening, watching, and have a good evening. Thank you.